Hello and Happy New Year, and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. We hope you had an excellent New Year's celebration. I'm Steve Lance, and thank you for joining us. An historical moment soon to unfold in Congress. An intense vote for House Speaker is before us in less than 20 hours. Some members challenging the status quo could draw the vote out for days. That would make it the first time in a century that a vote for Speaker would go to multiple ballots. Here's NTD's Melina Wisecup to break it down for us.
So right now there is just one member publicly saying he will challenge McCarthy tomorrow. That's Representative Andy Biggs from Arizona. Now Biggs already lost that internal nomination vote within the Republican Party a couple of weeks ago, but it is important to put that vote into context. Biggs won about 30 votes, which means there were 30 Republicans who voted against McCarthy already. And now Biggs says he's up for the challenge yet again. Here's why.
We would restore rules that were in place for literally over 100 years before Nancy Pelosi came in and shrunk them. We would we devolve and divest power away from the center. And by opening that up, we'd create good process, and good process will make good policy.
Now, some members have indicated they will vote for Biggs tomorrow, and McCarthy, he can only afford to lose just 4 votes because of that slim margin in the House. Now, there has been for a while now a group of 5 Republicans who have been so-called hard no votes. They will not vote for McCarthy tomorrow, but the latest pushback against McCarthy is depicted here in a letter from 9 House Republicans. Representative Scott Perry posted that letter on Twitter, writing, "Time to make the change or get out of the way." In that letter, they pretty much thanked McCarthy for his efforts for proposing those rule changes, but they said it's too late. And in essence, they were criticizing these new proposed rule changes. One of the most notable being the motion to vacate. So McCarthy conceded in a way here with allowing the motion to vacate to be reinstated, and it would allow just 5 members to call a vote to replace the Speaker. But this group of 9 Republicans and other members in the House Freedom Caucus say this just isn't enough. And another interesting rules change would allow members to target and reduce the salaries of federal employees. But of course, all of these rules will only be laid on the table for members to vote on after they elect the Speaker, that being the first step. And as for how long that will take, it's still unclear with the challenge that's playing out right now. It could take days for us to know the results. The longest vote in history was back in the 1850s, and that lasted about 2 months.
So Melina, starting off the new year like this really is a snapshot of how we may be able to expect the next 2 years playing out in Congress. So if you could tell us, how challenging will it actually be to pass anything during this 118th Congress?
Right, Steve. So this speakership battle is really just the start of an internal battle that will be playing out in Washington over the next 2 years. And that's because with such a slim margin that Republicans do have in the House, it will be difficult for leadership to navigate those waters because they can only lose just a couple of votes to pass anything. So if there is a small faction of the party, such as the House Freedom Caucus, who is, going against whatever, leadership is trying to put forth, this could create some delays. And then if you think about it even further, not only will the leadership in the House also will have to get their party in line and make sure everybody's on the same page there, but then they'll also have to work with the Democrat-controlled Senate and, of course, President Biden in the White House. So it is looking like it will be a tough couple of years ahead. Steve, back to you.
Thank you for that, Melina. As the GOP takes control of the House this week, President Biden joining Republican officials to tout bipartisanship. NTD's Iris Tao has more.
And coming back to a changed Washington, President Biden will open the new year with a bipartisanship blitz. And Biden's traveling to Kentucky on Wednesday to tout infrastructure investment. There, he'll make a rare joint appearance with Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, as well as the state's Republican governor. The Wednesday stop will come just a day after Republicans take power in the House, and it will be just a start. Biden's expected to make stops around the country over the coming weeks, touting what he calls bipartisan achievements. Meanwhile,
and too often we see each other as enemies, not as neighbors, as Democrats and Republicans, not as fellow Americans.
At the end of last year, Biden appealed for less partisanship, and last week he sounded optimistic about the coming year.
2023 is going to be a good year.
Looming over Biden's efforts to show bipartisanship is his decision on whether to announce a 2024 bid. He said he would consult with family members over the holidays, but didn't give a solid answer when asked on Friday.
Did you talk to your family about running for re-election, sir?
There's an election coming up?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Biden will turn 81 at the end of this year and be 82 when the next presidential election comes around. Reporting by Iris Tao, NTD News.
As the new Congress convenes, an incoming Democratic congressman will have to couch surf in D.C. This is after he was denied an apartment due to his poor credit. Congressman-elect Maxwell Alejandro Frost of Florida said he's dealing with the housing problem as he begins his tenure.
Getting denied from apartments, trying to figure out where to live because I have bad credit. Probably just going to have to couch surf for a little bit.
Frost said last month that his credit score is low because he spent too much on his congressional campaign. At 25 years old, he's set to be the first Generation Z member of Congress. He was elected to take the seat formerly held by Democrat Val Demings. Demings lost her Senate bid this past election cycle to Marco Rubio by roughly 16 percentage points. Katie Hobbs is sworn in as Arizona's 24th governor. She's the first Democrat to hold that office since 2009. Hobbs took over for Republican Doug Ducey in a private ceremony. Along with other state officials, she's set to have a public inauguration this coming Thursday. Hobbs will have to work with the Republican-controlled legislature, both the House and Senate in the state of Arizona. The new legislature convenes for the first time next week, and her inauguration comes on the heels of multiple election lawsuits that have been thrown out. Her opponent, Kari Lake, still vowing to appeal. Elon Musk has exposed how Twitter previously censored information, specifically when it comes to COVID-19 vaccine safety, since he took over the platform. Many doctors who have questioned the safety and efficacy of the vaccine have now been reinstated on the platform. But is the medical community at large now more accepting of their views compared to before? To discuss vaccine safety and COVID censorship, we spoke to Dr. Omar Hamada. Hamada, a medical doctor and a former lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army, joined us to discuss. Here's part of that interview. Dr. Omar Hamada, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks, Steve.
Dr. Hamada, what is your sense in the medical community right now that the veil is, starting to be lifted from all of the censorship over the vaccines and handling of the virus? Are they acknowledging any sort of missteps?
Not at all. The medical community at large is still very defensive about this whole COVID issue and still very supportive of the CDC and NIH's positions and Fauci's positions. But there are many of us who have been pushing back the entire time and with healthy skepticism that I think is scientifically based on scientific foundations. So I think the wave, the direction is slowly changing, but I don't think it will entirely come around.
Speaking of healthy skepticism, it is interesting to see mainstream media is starting to ask some questions, one of which I'd like to play for you, where Bill Gates was recently asked about the safety of the Moderna vaccine, specifically by CBS's Norah O'Donnell. Have a listen. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
Well, I want to ask you, you mentioned side effects. The side effects for the Moderna vaccine sound concerning. We looked. After the second dose, at least 80% of participants experienced a systemic side effect, ranging from severe chills to fevers. So, are these vaccines safe?
Well, the FDA, not being pressured, will look hard at that. The FDA is the gold standard of regulators, and their current guidance on this, if they stick with that, is very, very appropriate.
Your thoughts?
Well, I think you can tell by reading his body language that he's hesitating and he's a bit defensive because he knows the truth. And the truth is that the vaccine hasn't been adequately tested and that there are some significant issues with side effects. In fact, just this morning, Dr. Robert Malone tweeted that there are 20 deaths per million doses of vaccine, 60 deaths per million boosted people, which is 3 doses. The official death rate of COVID over, at large in the general population is about 100 per million primary infections. So If we look at the lower or the younger age groups who don't really need the vaccine because they're really not at risk of death with COVID, then the risk of the vaccine is a lot higher than the actual disease. And I think they know this. They're seeing all over the world people dying with unexplained causes after being vaccinated. Healthy athletes in their 30s, even children as young as newborns. So it's a real problem. I think they continue to deny it, but I think that there's enough information there and data there that people have to start taking notice.
So what do you think the actual extent is of the damage that was caused by this censorship? And do you think that lives were lost as a result?
Certainly. It's hard to quantitate it. And the problem is that COVID is a weaponized and a dangerous virus, and it is going to cause death. The vaccine was rushed to market. Whether or not it was developed to limit population growth and things like that, I'm not going to go that far. But I will go as far as saying that I think it was inadequately tested and pushed to market quicker than it should have been. And it has caused significant disability and death that could have been avoided. And I think that goes over and above what COVID would have caused.
Will there be any repercussions? And at the same time, how to make sure this won't happen again or continue to happen on other platforms that still have an ideological agenda?
Yeah, I don't know if there will really be any significant pushback or repercussions as far as legal or economic damages being found against these pharmaceutical companies or the government. I think they're pretty much protected. Will this happen again? Most certainly, I think, unless we as a people worldwide really push back. And I think people have started to push back all over the world. We see demonstrations in Western Europe. We see demonstrations in China. We see demonstrations here in the United States, probably not to the same extent. But I think that people have awakened to the fact that the governments necessarily don't have their best interest at heart.
Dr. Omar Hamada, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, my pleasure.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.